white shoes. I love my 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 white shoes. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that classic back to school, preschool, kindergarten, first grade, any grade song, I Love My White Shoes, which comes from the book by Eric Litwin, illustrated by James Dean, I Love My White Shoes, featuring Pete the Cat. Well, guess what? There's more to Eric Litwin than his Pete the Cat books. Eric Litwin was born in New York. He has 2 degrees, one in education and one in administration. He currently lives in Washington, D.C. with his wife, who's a gastrointestinal pediatric doctor, and his 2-year-old son. Now, Eric didn't always live in Washington, D.C. He used to live in Atlanta, and he used to be a teacher. And he was not just any old teacher. He was a special education teacher. That is where Eric's why became very evident. While living in Atlanta, Eric had a chance to collaborate and work with the original creator of the beloved Pete the Cat, and his name is James Dean. Eric and Dean worked together and they produced the first 4 original Pete the Cats. Pete the Cat rocking in his school shoes, Rock on Pete, and Pete the Cat in his white shoes. He also they also created Pete the Cat Saves Christmas and my ultimate favorite, Pete the Cat and his 4 groovy buttons. That's right, buttons come and buttons go, but do we cry? Goodness no. After Dean and Litwin parted ways, guess what? Litwin wasn't done. He had more awesome goodness to share with his young readers. He came up with another series, different characters, no longer Pete the Cat, but this family is just as cool and fun and musical as Pete. He created the Nuts. Now, if you have a family, no matter what your family looks like, you know that families can sometimes be nutty. Well, Eric shares the fun and singing that comes along with living in a nutty family. The Nuts sometimes have issues with getting to bed on time. They also have to learn lessons like just roll with it, just like Pete the Cat did with his buttons when they would go. Now, he didn't stop there. He introduced us to Groovy Joe. Groovy Joe likes to dance and sing. Groovy Joe also learns some important lessons in sharing and other typical preschool adventures that you would expect of children that typically love Eric Litwin's work. So, what else is there? Well, his most recent book. Hey, how'd that get there? That's not supposed to be there. That's supposed to be in the toilet. And guess what? Litwin wrote a book called The Poop Song. You heard it, The Poop Song. And why did he write a book about poop during the pandemic, you're wondering? Yep, he wrote it during the pandemic. It was pretty poopy times, but that's not why he wrote it. His wife is a pediatric gastrointestinal doctor, and she would sometimes come home and share with him stories that her patients shared with her. So Litwin decided to come up with a song to help his wife's patients. Well, when he was going along and going around and singing his songs and doing his storytelling thing, he performed the poop song, and guess what? Everyone loved it. So he decided, I can't keep this to myself. I have to share it with my beloved readers. And so the poop song was born. But because the poop song was born during poopy times, Litwin is working really hard to get the song and the message, because his books always have a message, out there to families of young children who are trying to tackle those poop training years. Now, guess what? Litwin was a teacher. Remember I told you that? And because he was a teacher, his why is deeply embedded in that classroom that he once called his own. Lippmann was intrigued by young children and the way they learned to read. He soon realized that he couldn't solve all of their problems, but he could give them something. He could give them a passion and a desire to learn to read and learn as much as they could, but for it to be fun. He noticed that readers sometimes lost their joy for reading sometime between kindergarten and getting to third grade, and Litwin wanted to figure out why and what he could do to help. So he came up with his dialogic style of storytelling where he would come up with music and movements to go with the words to the books that he had written. He found that incorporating music and movement together with the words, children were more engaged and the whole reading experience was interactive. Then that's when Litwin said, I'm onto something. And he decided to take this show on the road. And so now he travels all around to schools and churches and children's programs, sharing his love of reading and music with his fans. But don't let all these colorful books fool you. Lippmann also has written a book for teachers and for educators. It is specifically for those who work with young children or older children, but they want to instill the joy of reading in their lives. This book, which was published by Scholastic, was his first of professional development books for teachers, but it definitely won't be his last. If you're not familiar with any of Lippmann's work other than Pete the Cat, who is awesome by the way, I would suggest you stop by your local library and check out some of his books on the Nut Family, featuring the Nut Family or Groovy Joe.